Have you ever felt pressure to have your career all figured out? This week, I talked with Sabine Hutchison, CEO, author of Beyond the Ladder, and founder of the Ripple Network, about what it really means to build a career with clarity when the path isn't linear. Sabina shares her journey from scientist to entrepreneur and how trial and error became a powerful strategy for growth. We talk about the pressure to have one clear passion, why so many careers are actually zigzags, and how that expectation to have it all figured out can fuel self doubt. In this conversation, we also talk about why clarity comes from experience, not from having all the answers up front, how to let go of the pressure to climb a traditional career ladder, and what it looks like to define ambition on your own terms. Thank you so much, as always, for listening. Welcome to the Impostor Syndrome Files. My name is Kim Meninger, and as an executive coach and former high-tech leader, my personal mission is to help professionals overcome imposter syndrome so that you can advance your career with confidence. Each week, I interview a new guest who brings a powerful perspective to this conversation, including personal stories, best practices, and new insights. The more we talk about this issue, the more we destigmatize imposter syndrome, recognize that we're not alone, and empower ourselves to access the tools and resources that can help us and those around us. Thank you so much for listening and for sharing with others you think would benefit from this conversation. Welcome, Sabine. It's so wonderful to have you here today. I'd love to start by inviting you to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, Kim. Thanks very much for asking me to come have a chat with you today. So I'm looking forward to it. Who am I? I am someone who's curious. I love talking to people. So this is interesting for me to be on the other side of the mic. I'm a CEO. I've written a book called Beyond the Ladder, and I'm the founder of the Ripple Network, which is a networking platform actually to help women focus on their speaking skills. So a lot of the work that I do is really focused on areas to support women in their career growth and development, to help them stand up and be even stronger than they are.
Wonderful. So have you always done this work? Where were you earlier in your career?
No, I'm actually, I think I reinvent. Sometimes I don't know how often it's like you can peel your skin and try new things. And so I've done quite a bit of that. I actually am a scientist. I studied chemistry and have moved into this space. I moved to Germany 28 years ago and started working at a lab actually here, and then have started my own company since then. And the space that I'm in now, a lot of it is self-taught. I've learned it along the way and just keep trying things. And I think that's actually the beauty of our careers, is actually to try and to practice and see what works and what doesn't. And that's what really helps us to advance and to grow and to be happy and to have more clarity in what we do every day.
Can we stick with that point for a moment? Because I think there are a lot of us out there who have told us ourselves the story that we should know what we want to
Mhm.
do, and that
Yeah.
it's a linear path for each of us.
Yeah.
And so it almost feels like we're breaking the rules or we're
Yeah.
doing something wrong when we are doing exactly as you said, which is trial and error and
Mhm.
learning about ourselves
Yeah.
in the process.
Absolutely. And it's interesting that you say that, because you're right. I think we hear so much about find your purpose, find your passion. You have to have it, and it's so important. And in the book that I wrote, which is called Beyond the Ladder, because I feel that we don't climb, well, some people climb ladders, and some people climb ladders and they're happy with that. But a lot of us are a zigzag and messy ways in our career that don't, if you kind of step back, you think, "Ooh, how did that happen?" And I think that that's actually the joy of the career, is to do that. And this idea of a passion and having to know exactly what you want to do, I I don't agree with that. I think you can have goals and aspirations. And one of the ladies that I interviewed for the book, she said, sometimes I feel like a failure because I hear people talking about, I have a passion or I have this big vision of what I want to do. And she was like, I don't. I have lots of them. I have lots of things that I'm really interested in and that I care about and that I want to do. She said, "Sometimes I feel like a butterfly, going to different flowers because that's what I wanna focus on for right now, is that particular flower and that pollen that's on that flower." And she was like, "I wanna feel good about that and not feel like a failure because I don't have this one big grand passion."
And how heartbreaking to think that she would feel that there was something wrong with that because
Mhm.
there's so much. I think there's a benefit to having lots of diverse interests and being able to find joy
Yeah.
in lots of different places.
Yeah, that is so true because had I only stayed in my lane as a scientist, I would have never written a book. I didn't know how to write a book. I wrote formulas. I didn't I didn't create these stories and more abstract ideas, but to give it a try and to say, "You know what? I'm gonna try this, and I'm gonna step in and give it a whirl and see what happens," and work with people. I think that's the key. Is there if there are areas that you're interested in and you don't feel like you're an expert, hello, there are so many people out there that can help you. I had a great copy editor and someone that really worked through the process with me, so she helped me, and she's the expert. I had the ideas, and she helped me put the storylines together and to get my ideas out in a very coherent way. So use the people around you. I think that that's an important thing is that you don't have to do it all yourself if you don't have your one big grand passion. And even if you do have your one big grand passion, you still don't have to do it by yourself.
Yes, and there's something so liberating when you allow yourself to really believe that because I do think
Yep.
that there is also and, I mentioned perfectionism before we hit the record, but
Mhm.
I think there is some, many ways in which people sort of feel like if I am worthy of my success, it will be because I've done it on my
Yeah.
own, whereas that's just not the reality.
That's just not the
That's not
reality.
how humans operate, right?
No. And who has? Actually, if you really get to the core of that idea, who has done it completely by themselves with no support?
Mhm.
Nobody.
Mhm.
Nobody. And potentially your trajectory can be even faster, or you can have more of an impact if you work with people and you utilize a support team around yourself. So you could get your book on the market faster and help potentially someone else because you've decided to collaborate and to get that support. So it's just a bit of a mindset shift, I think.
Absolutely, and since you mentioned the book, I wanna talk a little bit about it. What is Beyond the Ladder?
Beyond the Ladder is I've read so many fabulous books on career development and growth. And I felt for myself, there were areas that from this book, I thought, this topic is kind of interesting from this one. And so I had all of these ideas about what I thought would have been beneficial for me, is beneficial for me now, but also earlier in my career to pull those together. And so beyond the ladder is this idea that we break away also from this traditional kind of story that a lot of us have been told that you have to take these steps on the ladder. But there's so many ways to develop and grow your career, and a lot of it is about stories and hearing from other women that you don't have to do it by yourself. But a lot of it is around finding your own clarity and what do you need. So that's the beginning of the book is a lot of self-reflection and thinking about your values and what do you want? And again, it doesn't have to be this one focused thing. You can have 10 things on your list. But to think about how do I start to prioritize and who do I need to actually there's a section on a network and building a network. So if I want to achieve this, who do I need that can help me support that? What skills do I need
Mhm.
that potentially could help me support that? And with the book, because I'm a very practical kind of girl, I
Mhm.
wrote a workbook as well. So I love reading, but I also like to get and write and journal, and I have lots of notebooks. And I thought, "Oh my gosh, there are all these notebooks all over." We've all had I think you probably have a big stack also in your office as well,
Everywhere.
over the years, everywhere. And I wanted this place where you could keep your career bits together So you can go back and you can reflect and you can look, a few years ago, what was I focusing on? What values were really pertinent for me at that time? Has that shifted? Do I need to potentially expand my network? Do I need a coach maybe now? So I wanted to create something that's very much kind of a living journal and partner as we move in our career.
I love that so much, and I think that, I often talk about the fact that the world is moving at such a rapid pace, and we are so
Yeah.
overstimulated by the noise around us that we rarely take the time to
Mm,
reflect, to think more deeply. That clarity that you're talking about often
yeah.
eludes us because we've got so many day-to-day to-do things, items on our
Hmm.
list, right? And so I love the idea of A, taking the time to actually reflect on the themes that you described, but also having a container for it as well.
Yeah. You're right, b and it's interesting because I've had some women share with me that they're like, "Oh, but, if I take the time to do this, I need to do it in the evening or I need it on do it on the weekends." And I was like, But why is that? Why can't you in your lunchtime or your first hour of the day, you work on yourself? Because it's actually beneficial for your employer, because if you're in a better place and you step into your day with more clarity, you're able to perform your job better. So I think we also need to break away from this idea that working on ourselves needs to be done, in the quiet of an evening or, your Sunday morning with a coffee. Those are definitely times when you can do it, but integrate it into your life. And don't necessarily just plop it into these times where it can easily fall away.
You're so right to think about it as it's an investment not just in yourself, but in the success of your organization and your team when you work
100%.
on yourself. And I also find, and I really appreciate the fact that my individual clients often take time out of their workday to meet with me. That
Mhm.
obviously is better for my schedule as well. Uh, but what I what I think is really powerful about that, to your point, is that there is something different about being in the thick of it than when you are
Mm,
thinking about it later more abstractly. I think if you
yeah.
have a system for taking note of, oftentimes I think about it in terms of energy or confidence or, what's bringing me the most energy? Where do I feel like I'm adding the greatest value? It's
Yeah.
harder to really emotionally connect with that when you're thinking about it later as opposed to when you're
Exactly, at the moment,
yeah.
because a lot of the things that I talk about are like, in the book is actually in the moment. So, I also have, for instance, one thing that I have is a failure log is actually to document what you would consider as a failure, and those are difficult to do because we forget. I don't know, what you said earlier is like we're bombarded with information, and I think it's important to document and to track things like that in the now. So when something happens, go, "Okay, I have this place where I can put this down," and then you can still reflect on it later, but you've gotten it kind of out of your head and on to paper or in a computer, however you decide that you want to document your thoughts and your ideas. So I'm a big fan of doing things right away and actually doing them,
Mm,
because we can fall into this trap again of being so busy that we just don't. We don't take the time to jot things down. I've gotten in the habit where I have a notebook and I write down two things every day. One is that one thing that I'm grateful for, and one is my intention for the day. And that just becomes part of what I do, and
mm.
it's very beneficial because it's interesting, my intention for the past month has been the same, and I'm a believer too that practice and hearing things over and over again, so my intention is to, be present and in the moment, exactly for the reason that there's so many things, emails are popping up, I'm getting a message on my phone, and that can be distracting when I'm engaging with someone. So for me, r writing it down for almost a month now is now where it's part of my day. It feels more part of me now than something that I wish that I would do, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, and what I love about that too is there isn't a lot of patience in the world.
Yeah. I know, it seems
You
to be
know
diminishing.
right, and we sort of live in this immediate gratification.
Mhm.
Well, my husband's always lamenting the fact that, the kids can push the pause button on the TV. They don't have to wait for everything
Yeah,
at
it's
their
true.
fingertips. And so I think what you're describing too also acknowledges the fact that if I set an intention, it takes time. And sometimes we give up too soon. We think, oh,
Yep.
well, I didn't do it today. So I must not be good at this. And I'm just going to move on to something
Yeah.
else.
Not at all, just to keep with it. It's like I talk a lot about when we wanna learn an instrument or we are learning a new sport or a language or anything like that, we schedule time and we practice it and we practice and we practice and we practice, and then eventually, we get it down. But if you think about those first violin lessons compared to a year later, it's gonna be like night and day, and I think that's such a practical it's such a good way to also reflect on what we do with ourselves, is that sometimes we want this fairy godmother to come and wave her magic wand and voila, we got it. But it just doesn't work that way. And I think, yeah, the patience piece is important, that we forget that we need the practice to do this and the consistency with doing it. And we kind of push ourselves because it's like going to the gym too, right? January 1st, whoop, whoop. Everyone's at the gym. But, February 1st, it's already starting to go down. But yeah, I'm a big believer of that kind of consistency is key.
Yes, absolutely. I want to go back for a moment to the concept of the ladder and get your thoughts on, and this ties back to clarity too, but I have
Mm.
had a number of women over the years almost whisper in shame to me, I don't think I want to be promoted. And
Mhm.
there's this sense that I'm once again breaking the rules, that there is this proverbial ladder that we are all supposed to want to climb,
Mhm.
and that if we don't want that, then there must be something wrong with our ambition,
Yeah.
or there's something off about us. And
Mhm.
I'd love for you to dig a little bit more deeply into that. You were talking about the fact that, zigging and zagging is how most of us grow our
Mhm.
careers. But I think that there's still a piece there that makes us feel like, I should want something that I
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah, that's such a good point to discuss. I think that absolutely not everybody wants to be a CEO, not everyone wants to be in the C-suite, and that's where the clarity piece comes in. It's like, what do you want? And if you don't want to climb a ladder and you're really happy in your job where you are, you can still look at your career and develop, but you can develop there. You can still bring in new skill sets. You can still network and grow a sponsor within the company that you are. But if you're happy where you are, stay there but do that well and be happy in that. I think that this idea that we all have to have these aspirations again is just, um, yeah, I don't believe in it. I see a lot of women and, yeah, men too, that are really happy in being in their role and they want to stay there. They love it and they do it for years. But they're really good at what they do and they feel really happy and fulfilled. So if that's your space, be clear about it and then, yeah, just thrive in that space.
Yes, yes. And I often joke that if everyone wanted to be a CEO, most of us would end up feeling like, either disappointment or
Right.
failure, because there aren't enough, unless you start your own business, there just aren't enough
Yep.
CEO positions to go around. And so
Yeah.
there's a lot to be said for growing your expertise and, being of service in different ways.
100%.
And
Yeah.
do you have any thoughts on conversations to have with your manager or internally when you make that decision? Because I think that's part of the self-doubt comes too, not just
Mhm.
from owning that decision, but also having to communicate that to somebody
Mhm.
else who may be implicitly or explicitly pressuring you to go up that ladder.
Yeah. I I go back to this piece on clarity again, and that you think about yourself, you think about your values, where do they sit, and what do they mean for the job that you're in? And then you start again, I like to write things down, and I don't just have everything in my head, but to write down, why I wanna stay in this role, how I can add such impact to the organization in this role, and that's what I wanna do. So once you start feeling confident in that, first yourself, I believe that that's the first step is to feel really good about being in that space, and that may take some time. So again, don't have expectations that you're like, "Ooh, I decided this today and then tomorrow I need to go talk to my manager." You don't. Build your story around that and why that this is the right thing for you. And then you're able to articulate that well with your employer, and you can talk about the value that you add there and the impact that you can make on the organization where you are.
Yeah, I love that. It's almost it's similar in principle to the conversation you would have if you were asking for a promotion.
Exactly. Yep, exactly. But it's like, I'm here, I'm good, and I'm gonna make you hugely successful because I'm gonna be fabulous in this position.
Yes, I love that. Can you talk a little bit about the Ripple network too?
Mm, yeah, the Ripple network. So, 3 years ago, I took a course, with, a really fabulous lady called Emma Weiner to do a TED Talk, and I felt the need, I wanted to tell this story. I wanted to also work on my speaking, not necessarily at that point, it wasn't necessarily that I just needed to be on a stage, but I also wanted to improve the way that I tell stories at work and with my team and engage with clients. And I thought that this would be a great way for me to do that. And I loved it. And I ended up writing a talk, which I thought was pretty good. I thought was really happy with it. And um the 2 other ladies, there were 3 of us in the course. All 3 of us have not been on a TED stage to tell this story. And I started thinking about this and like, this is such a pity because these stories are really impactful and we're being limited by can we get on this particular stage? I thought that's such a shame.
Mm.
So I came up with the Ripple Network as a place where we can practice where you can go in and learn how to structure stories. And we start with sometimes little things, like we have a cohort that's actually starting in February where it's going to be interesting how they respond because you start by introducing yourself. We look at different ways of how you introduce yourself because that can be a struggle. One of the ladies that's going to participate, she said, I have to go to a lot of kind of evening events and she said, "I get stuck, and what do I tell people about myself?" So this is also something that you can practice and work on. So you start to build your list of stories that you can weave into the conversation. So that's all what we do in the Ripple network is work on those speaking skills, and it's practice. Practice, practice, practice. So you get a challenge, you record yourself, and then you get feedback from the community and from the partners that are part of the network.
I love that. I think that sounds too like a much less intimidating space to do.
Yes. Yep, exactly. And you start small. And again, that's what I think is so important because sometimes some of my friends make fun of me. So I get an idea in my head and for instance, I was like, I'm going to knit. My friend is a knitter and she knits sweaters. Well, instead of starting with like a scarf, like something that's straight and simple, I'm like, oh, I'm going to do this sweater. So I buy everything to do the sweater. And so often I don't get further because I've taken on too much. So, I'm a big fan of starting small and doing that practice, and then it just becomes easier and easier. So, the more comfortable you are sharing a story, the more comfortable you are speaking up in a meeting, the more comfortable you are presenting in a meeting, saying, "Hey, I'm gonna take on this project. I'm gonna present." To the board or to whoever. So it's about this practice and this comfortable space to do it because if you think about it, where do you actually practice?
Mm,
You don't. Where can I practice a speech besides maybe to your partner or in front of the mirror?
that's true.
You're limited. So that's what this is about is to take that first step and to record yourself and to load it up. Those are the first kind of like, "Ooh, I'm gonna put myself out there," but it gets easier every time. And that's what the Ripple Network is about, is to make each step just a little bit easier.
I love that. And that goes back to the beginning of our conversation, too, about doing it with other people.
Yes. And feeling and we have smaller cohorts. So, for instance, like 12 to 14 people. So it feels much more comfortable. It's not so big. There's still people you don't know.
Mm,
Some companies have done it for actually their teams. So they bring their team, pick people from their team to come in, but it's smaller and that still can feel uncomfortable, but at least that's a bit more manageable than, hundreds of people
absolutely.
to take that first step.
Do you have thoughts on sourcing stories? I think a lot of, going back to what we've been talking
Mm.
about with a lot of our day being a blur because we're so busy, do you recommend any practice for keeping track of things that you might want to use as a story?
Oh, yes, I do. You know me. Have you heard me talk about this before? Yes, I have a notebook and I put stories in there constantly. It's funny too. I was just in a meeting with some team members and I started playing chess over the Christmas holidays with my husband. And so he's pretty good. I'm not. I'm getting there. I'm practicing. And I beat him for the first time 2 nights ago. Yes. And I was sharing the story about this, about how, when you play chess, it's so interesting because you kind of have, or at least as when you start, I had this strategy. I'm moving this piece here, and that's where I'm going. But then I forget about the other side of the board. Where there's all kinds of stuff happening there, and I'm like, "Ooh, he's already got that piece," because I'm not paying attention to that. So the focus, I was like, this is an interesting, some sort of leadership or working story that I could weave into a conversation about having that bird's eye view
Mm,
about if I'm just focusing on one piece and moving that forward, I can lose sight of this. And I've written it down. So that's what I do. Anytime I have situations like that and I think of something, I write it down. And then I really do have a catalog of stories that I pull up. So sometimes if I don't have a notebook with me, I've been at the airport and experienced something, I record it. I've gotten in the habit of doing things right away because I forget them if I don't. So that's how I build my storybook of stories to use.
I think that's such a great idea. And it also speaks to what you were talking about with being present because you noticed
Yeah.
it in the moment.
Yeah.
And I think
So
it's
true.
easy sometimes to just breeze right past it. And so that's another way of practicing being present and
Being
being
present.
focused on where you are.
Yeah. Yeah. So true. And it's all tying together.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. It's almost as if we planned this and we
I
did.
know. Yeah, no, we didn't at all, actually. This is incredible.
I know. Well, this has been such an amazing conversation, Sabine, and I know there's a lot more where this came from. So for people listening who want to learn more about you, the book, the network,
Mhm.
where can they find you?
Yes, you can reach out to me directly. My website is as my name, sabinehutchison.com. So you can contact me directly, or you can have a look at the ripplenetwork.com. And there you can find all my contact details. And yeah, if you're interested in learning more or even just having a discussion, I love meeting new people. So like to make connections.
Wonderful. Well, I'll make sure those are in the show notes. And thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the work that you're doing.
Yeah, thank you, Kim. It was a pleasure.
Thanks so much for listening to the Impostor Syndrome Files. If you would like to continue this conversation in a safe and trusted space, I would love for you to join my virtual discussion group every Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern. For the past several years, the group has been limited to women, but it is now open, regardless of gender, to anyone who is interested in exploring and troubleshooting common workplace challenges, building better awareness of ourselves and others, and becoming more inclusive allies at work. Check out the show notes for more info on how to find us, and please join us next week for another episode of the Impostor Syndrome Files.